welcome to this tactical analysis of the Paris Saint-Germain versus Benfica game. We're going to have a look at Paris Saint-Germain's deep builder and their dynamic style of play. And then with Benfica, we're going to look at how they sought to build up in the wide spaces and their 4-4-2 press and the roles of their fullbacks. Okay, so first of all, in this scenario, in the 14th minute, we're having a look at Benfica's 4-4-2 shape out of possession. Initially in the game, their fullbacks were relatively reserved. Later, we're going to see that they're going to, at least near side, look to close the gap between themselves and the Paris Saint-Germain forward who's dropped. This was a 4-4-2 against essentially 3-4-2-1 for Paris Saint-Germain. Notice for Paris Saint-Germain, Verratti has dropped to become the central centre-back because Marquinhos, who was likely to do this throughout the game, moved into a midfield position. A little less flexible were the other two centre-backs in Ramos and Pereira, who typically just split almost as if they were playing traditional centre-backs in a back four. And note also Sarabia and Neymar, both of whom look to drop to present themselves as options for passes through the lines, whilst Mbappe is looking to be on the shoulder of the last man. Benfica were able to win the ball back and look to attack in a 2-4-4 shape. Their near side fullback would run up the touchline, but they weren't really looking to get in behind. You know also how the wide midfielder here in Ausnes drops to try and link with the rest of the midfield and defence. We'll see a similar thing done here by Mario on the right hand side when Benfica look to go up this side. Note also how static the forwards are. This was definitely a problem throughout most of the game really. And then lastly, notice just how narrow all the forwards are, and this is whilst they're playing against Paris Saint-Germain's 5-3-2. I class this a 5-3-2 just because Neymar consistently throughout the game did drop to try and help out his midfielders, whereas Sarabia, he would help by dropping, but he would kind of just press a little bit in this left hand side, but he wouldn't really drop to be next to Vitinha. Finally, we see a run from one of the Benfica forwards, but Grimaldo doesn't look to take advantage. Again, look how narrow all the forwards are. How I mentioned that Neymar would drop, whereas Sarabia wouldn't really. Okay, so Grimaldo makes it very high on this left-hand side, looking to try and help Ausnes, who's buffeted away by Hakimi pressing high, as well as Vitinha coming across to try and support in that wide space. As the Paris Saint-Germain 5-3-2 had covered all the way towards this left-hand side, Benfica now play it towards their favoured side, just as we saw on the left-hand side. As Benfica play up the right-hand side, Mario, the near-sided wide midfielder, looks to drop and support his full-back bar. Here, unlike other situations, we're seeing a run by Ramos looking to get in behind, put some pressure on this back line, but we're still seeing the very narrow forward line for Benfica. Again, Benfica switched the point of attack from right to left, and on this occasion, we're getting a lot more dynamism out of our forwards, looking to try and take advantage of the space in behind Hakimi, who looked to press higher up on this left-hand side. Again, starting with Benfica in a 4-4-2 shape, looking to press against the 2-5-3 of Paris Saint-Germain. We've got Marquinhos again in midfield with Verratti covering for him, and Vitinha and Neymar Jr. in those spaces between the lines. Here we see Verratti doing Marquinhos' role, stepping out from that centre-back position and pushing into more of a CDM role, whilst Ramos and Pereira split. Again, we've got Neymar and Vitinha as those number 6s ahead of Marquinhos and Verratti. Mbappe holding the line, whilst Sarabia also is dropping to link play. And here, the 4-4-2 of Benfica has become a little bit more flexible. They do this for most of the rest of the game, where their near-sided fullback is a lot more aggressive, looking to leave their player in Sarabia here and instead look to press towards the Paris Saint-Germain wing-back, whilst the near-sided wide midfielder for Benfica looks to press the near-sided wide centre-back of Paris Saint-Germain. Unfortunately for Luis here, he tried to track Vitinha, but in doing so, that created space for Verratti to fire a pass into Sarabia. This misposition in air quotes is caused by Hakimi's excellent pass into Verratti as Verratti made his run. But Paris Saint-Germain really love this kind of transition, because with this, they now have both Sarabia and Neymar, who are pretty good at carrying the ball, just able to work in an absolute ton of space. And given they have Mbappe and a 3 versus 3, Benfica just have to retreat. I just want to point out here Hakimi joining the counter-attack. I say counter-attack in air quotes. This was something he liked to do throughout the game. Okay, so in this scenario, we're going to see that same 4-4-2 from Benfica versus what is essentially a 3-1 from Paris Saint-Germain. Marquinhos again allowed to kind of move between that central centre-back role and the CDM position, which prevents the two centre-forwards from ever really being able to put any pressure on Ramos or Pereira. High and wide positions from the Paris Saint-Germain wing-backs, helped by the positioning of these two forwards for Paris Saint-Germain on the Benfica full-backs, preventing them, or at least dissuading them from looking to go out into those areas. As the ball goes out towards the touchline, the Benfica press does become more aggressive, more intense. Seeing here, Sarabia looking to drop to try and link with Hakimi, but unlike earlier, now the fullback is looking to try and track him because they've moved out into this wide space and the team has been able to somewhat compress the pitch. Okay, so we still have that 4-4-2 from Benfica, except now look how reserved the fullbacks are due to how deep possession is being held by Paris Saint-Germain and the position of the rest of their midfield. The fullback doesn't want to push out to Hakimi too early. Okay, so here Grimaldo we can see is looking, now that the ball is deeper and we've got his midfield somewhat pushing across, putting some pressure on the ball, he's looking to try and be more aggressive towards Hakimi. Okay, and after circulating possession somewhat around the back by Paris Saint-Germain, Bernat becomes impatient and drives up the left-hand side after Mbappe has pulled into a more central position to create space for Bernat to run into. Again, notice how Vitinha and Neymar are playing here between the lines. Unfortunately, Bernat's way is barred in that last move, and now we look at this scenario in the 81st minute. Benfica are retreating after their corner was just defended. Here we are in the 81st minute and we still have this 5-3-2 shape by Paris Saint-Germain with Neymar still defending his left-hand side. Here, Bar is in a covering position still after the corner, but he'll look to be dynamic and overlap Mario. Just as in the first half, Benfica heavily right-hand side tilted. Again, relatively narrow in the distances between the forwards and very limited runs in behind by forwards. Benfica win possession after the Paris Saint-Germain throw-in, and here they feign to go towards the left-hand side, but of course, you know, they're going to just come back to this right-hand side. And so they look to try and get this combination on this right-hand side again. Fortunately, now forward is actually looking to try and take advantage of the space in behind Bernat when he looks to try and press towards Ba. Unfortunately for Benfica, Paris Saint-Germain are able to regain possession and Verratti is able to inject some pace, some dynamism into Paris Saint-Germain's attack. Again, note Hakimi looking to try and get in here on the counter-attack. Neymar decided against going gung-ho and Paris Saint-Germain pass it back into their back three. At this point, a back three with Verratti as the CDM. Or alternatively, you could call it a back two because we know Marquinhos is going to want to move here into midfield again, given the opportunity. And so we see that literally a few seconds later with him being able to expose the centre forwards who've been attracted to the centre backs, creating a space for him. But Marquinhos doesn't really look to try and drive into that space, force Paris Saint-Germain forward. This was part of Paris Saint-Germain's rhythm. They liked playing a relatively slow, passive style until they found a bit of space and the likes of Neymar or Sarabia were able to exploit it and force a transition on Benfica. Here we have Mbappe dropping on this left-hand side, drawing out the Benfica ball back. Eventually, the ball is played out here to the left-hand side for Mbappe to try and beat Gilberto on the left-hand side, but Gilberto is having none of it and takes Mbappe out. With that, we've covered the tactics for this game. If you've enjoyed the content, please give it a thumbs up, consider sharing it on social media, maybe subscribing. If you enjoyed the video, please consider watching some of other Champions League, Women's Super League or Premier League content. And with that, we're out.